The crystal chandelier poured a golden glow across the polished mahogany table as our family came together for Christmas dinner. It was the same table I had sat at for 32 years, always watching my father carve the turkey with the precision of a surgeon and the authority of a king. But tonight felt different. The air buzzed with a subtle current, a tension sharp enough to make my mother fiddle with her pearls and push my brothers into trading quick, knowing looks. I adjusted my plain black sweater and took another bite of mashed potatoes, letting the familiar taste of Mom's cooking linger. My phone hummed quietly in my purse, but I ignored it. Whatever Forbes wanted could wait. "Sarah," my father began, lowering his carving knife with the drama of a stage actor. "There's something important we need to discuss as a family." Michael and David immediately straightened in their chairs. Michael's wife, Jennifer, leaned forward eagerly, while David's wife, Patricia, wore a faint smirk she didn't bother to hide. Their sons, Jake and Tommy, both college students, glanced up from their screens with half curiosity. "Of course, Dad," I replied softly, reaching for my glass of water. "What's on your mind?" My father cleared his throat, the same way he always did before grand announcements. "I've been finalizing my will with the estate attorney. Your mother and I have made some decisions about how things will be divided." The room fell into silence, broken only by the steady crackle of the fireplace in the next room. I kept eating, though I could feel every eye shift toward me. "The businesses, the properties, the investments," my father declared, his voice steady and final, "will go to Michael and David. They've shown they can handle the responsibility." I nodded slowly and cut another piece of turkey. "I understand." Mom leaned forward, her voice warm but edged with condescension. "Sarah, sweetheart, it's not that we don't love you, but you've always been different. That little computer job of yours, living in a tiny downtown apartment. You've never been interested in real business." Michael tugged at his designer tie, then cleared his throat. "Exactly. Dad's construction company requires someone who knows contracts, negotiations, development. And the restaurant chain," David added, draping his arm around Patricia, "needs hands-on leadership. Managing vendors, staff, multiple locations. That's not really your thing." I took a sip of the Bordeaux in front of me, a 1998 vintage that costs more than most people's rent, though no one at the table knew I'd quietly added it to their cellar last month. "You're right," I said evenly. "I wouldn't know the first thing about running multiple businesses." Relief flickered across my father's face. "I'm glad you understand, sweetheart. Of course, this doesn't mean we don't value you. There will be a small trust fund, enough to keep you comfortable. Maybe 50,000. Jennifer beamed, looking smug. "It really is for the best, Sarah. Michael and I already have plans for expansions, new locations. We'll make good use of the inheritance. We're even eyeing that new development downtown." Patricia jumped in, smiling. "The luxury condos overlooking the harbor. David says it's a gold mine." I almost laughed into my glass. Harborview Residences, the project owned and funded by my investment firm. The same property that had cleared over $30 million in profit just last quarter. "That does sound like a smart move," I said smoothly, keeping my voice level. Jake suddenly looked up, puzzled. "Wait, isn't that the building where Aunt Sarah's company?" "Sarah doesn't have a company, Jake," Michael cut in quickly. "She just works for someone else's computer business." I smiled at him. "That's right. Just coding work for other people." My phone vibrated again, harder this time. Emma's name lit up on the screen through the purse fabric. Probably the merger with the European tech firm. Or maybe news that the pharmaceutical acquisition had closed. Either way, it could wait. Dad lifted his glass. To family, and to keeping the business legacy in capable hands. Everyone raised their glasses. I didn't. I kept eating, eyes on my plate. "Sarah." Mom nudged gently. "Oh, sorry." I lifted my glass half-heartedly. "To family." We drank. David leaned back with a smug grin. "You know, Sarah, maybe this will finally push you to find a husband. Settle down. A woman your age shouldn't be living alone in a shoebox apartment, working herself to death on computers." "David." Mom scolded lightly, though her tone betrayed agreement. "No, he's right," I replied evenly, cutting another piece of turkey. 32 is getting up there. I probably should think about my future. My phone buzzed a third time, Emma again persistent. Whatever it was, it must have been urgent. But in this house, family dinners were sacred. Nothing interrupted Dad's proclamations. Then, out of nowhere, Tommy, 19, home from Harvard for winter break, froze mid-scroll on his phone. His eyes shot open wide, flicking from his screen to me, then back again. He muttered slowly. Aunt Sarah. Yes, sweetheart. I replied. I just got a news notification. Forbes released their updated billionaire rankings for the year. The chatter around the table went on, but I noticed Tommy staring harder at his phone, confusion spreading across his face. That's nice, honey, Jennifer said absent-mindedly as she sliced her son's turkey into smaller bites. But Tommy wasn't paying attention. His gaze stayed locked on his screen, his complexion draining of color with each second. Aunt Sarah, he repeated, his voice catching. There's a name here. It's yours. The conversations around us began tapering off as people picked up on his strange reaction. What do you mean, darling? My mother asked. Tommy raised the phone, his hand trembling. Sarah Thompson. Number 47 on Forbes' billionaire list. Net worth, he paused, swallowing hard, $3.8 billion. The room went dead quiet. David let out a shaky laugh. Come on, that's obviously another Sarah Thompson. It's not exactly a rare name. But Tommy kept staring at me. It says she's the founder and CEO of Quantum Dynamics. That's the AI company that just bought MedTech Industries. She's listed as 32 years old, from this city. And, he looked from the photo on his phone to my face. She looks exactly like Aunt Sarah. Every fork stopped midway. Glasses froze in the air. The only sound left was the fireplace crackling. My father's skin had gone pale. That's impossible. I calmly took another bite of turkey. Is it? Michael snatched the phone from Tommy, his own hands shaking as he read. His wife leaned closer, her mouth falling open. The photo. Jennifer whispered. That's her. No doubt. My mother stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Sarah, is this some kind of prank? I set my fork down, dabbed my lips with a linen napkin. What would you like to know? David yanked the phone from Michael, scanning frantically. It says here Quantum Dynamics was launched 8 years ago out of a tiny downtown apartment. The founder started with just a laptop and a few $1,000s in savings. My apartment, I said evenly. The room exploded with voices. This can't be true, my father stammered. You've always worked for other people. You've never said a word about owning a business. You never asked, I answered. Michael kept scrolling, his face changing with each article. Sarah, there are dozens of features here. Forbes, Fortune, The Wall Street Journal. They're all about you, about your company. Patricia leaned in to read over his shoulder. It says Quantum Dynamics transformed AI in healthcare, built the world's most advanced diagnostic systems, and just purchased 3 huge pharmaceutical firms. I nodded. That's correct. My father leaned toward me, his voice losing its usual authority. Why didn't you tell us? When exactly should I have? I asked. Maybe last Christmas, when David lectured me about how real business works. Or at Michael's birthday, when Jennifer suggested I settle down with a man who could provide for me since I clearly couldn't manage on my own. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable. Tommy kept reading, all thick in his voice. Aunt Sarah, it says you gave $50 million to children's hospitals last year. And you're funding a new cancer research facility, the Morrison Center. Yes, I confirmed. It'll open next spring. My mother fidgeted with her pearl necklace, her voice breaking. But you live in that tiny apartment. You drive that old Honda. I like my apartment. It's where I built everything. And the Honda works just fine. Michael set the phone down, his hands trembling. Sarah, if this is real, if you're truly worth almost $4 billion. Then what? I asked softly. The question lingered in the room like a haze. My father, who had just spent the past hour outlining all the reasons I wasn't fit to take over his mid-sized construction business, and the small family-owned restaurant chain, now sat facing someone whose personal fortune dwarfed his entire empire by 1,000-fold. David cleared his throat. I mean, How could we have possibly known? Didn't you ever wonder? I asked. Did you never stop to think how I managed to afford living downtown on what you assumed was a secretary's pay? Did you question why money never seemed to weigh on me? Why I never once asked this family for financial help? Jennifer's cheeks burned red. You let us believe you were barely scraping by. I never once claimed that, I replied evenly. You assumed I was struggling because I didn't show up in designer labels or pull up in a luxury car to family dinners. By now my father was scrolling on his phone, his expression unreadable. Sarah, he said at last, there's an article here from just last month. It says Quantum Dynamics bought out Thompson Industries. The air froze again. Thompson Industries? My mother whispered. I took a slow sip of wine. A small construction and restaurant group, I said lightly. I thought the name was fitting. Michael's face drained of color. You bought Dad's businesses? Technically, my investment firm did. I corrected. You were running into cash flow issues. Expansion required capital. I provided it. My father's voice dropped so low it was almost inaudible. You've been our silent partner for 6 months. Silent investor, I said gently. I prefer to stay out of the spotlight. David was frantically flicking through more articles. Sarah, there are photos of you here. Charity galas, global summits, even standing alongside world leaders. How did none of us ever see this? I use my middle name in my career, I explained. Sarah Elizabeth Thompson. And I don't really show up to local events. Patricia frowned in confusion. But why didn't you ever tell us? Why let us think? Think what? I cut in. That I was failing? That I needed your guidance? That I was the family embarrassment? The words hit the table like blows. My nephew Jake, who had been quietly reading, finally looked up, his eyes wide with awe. Aunt Sarah, he said. This article says you're one of the youngest self-made billionaires in history. It says you built your company while working full-time jobs in college. I nodded. I worked shifts at a coffee shop and did freelance coding to cover my expenses. My mother's eyes brimmed with tears, though I couldn't tell if it was from shock, shame, or something else entirely. Sarah, sweetheart, she whispered. We truly had no idea. I know. My father set his phone down, his hands trembling. Our talk about inheritance was completely fair. It was, I finished for him. You're dividing your assets between the children you think can handle them best. That's reasonable. Michael looked like he might be sick. But we just told you, you're not getting anything. We explained why you didn't deserve. And I agreed with your reasoning, I said calmly. I wouldn't know how to run a construction firm or manage a restaurant chain. But you already own them, David muttered weakly. Through a holding company, I replied. I write checks and show up to quarterly board meetings. That's a far cry from daily operations. The table had gone icy, the Christmas feast sitting untouched as everyone struggled to process the truth. Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. Sarah, when we were talking about buying those Harborview condos. Yes, I remember, I said. Do you own them? Yes. I developed them. Meridian Development Group is another one of my companies. The silence that followed was deafening. Tommy finally broke it, reading from yet another article. It says here you're aiming to transform urban living with sustainable, affordable housing projects, and you've already started construction on 4 developments. 5, I corrected. The 5th was approved just yesterday. My father's gaze swept the table before landing back on me. Sarah, he whispered. I owe you an apology. For what? I asked softly. For everything. For underestimating you. For dismissing what you've built. For assuming. Dad, I said gently. You don't owe me anything. You made choices based on the information you had. I never corrected your assumptions. Michael leaned forward, almost desperate. But why? Why keep it from us? I considered as I finished my glass of wine. Because I wanted one place where I could simply be Sarah. Not the CEO. Not the founder. Not the billionaire. Just your daughter. Your sister. Your aunt. Where I was loved for who I am. Not for what I've achieved. The words struck the table with the weight of a hammer. Patricia's voice dropped so low it was nearly a whisper. But you don't really love me, do you? I asked gently. I've known that for some time now. My mother broke down, sobbing openly. That isn't true, Sarah. We love you more than anything. No, you love the idea of me, I replied. The daughter who needs your advice, who lets you feel wiser, who makes you feel better about your own kids' achievements. That's not love for who I truly am. David shook his head wildly. That's not fair. You never showed us who you really were. I kept my work private, I said firmly. But that never changed who I am. I'm still the sister who sat with you while you studied for your business degree, David. The same one who taught Michael to code when he was considering a new career. The same person who babysat your kids, remembered every birthday, never missed a single family gathering. The weight of truth settled over the room like a heavy fog. My phone buzzed again, and this time I checked it. A message from Emma, urgent. European merger cleared. Signature needed by midnight for press release. Pharma acquisition complete. $2.3 billion wired. I typed quickly. Send papers to my apartment. I'll sign tonight. When I lifted my head, every eye was fixed on me. Work? My father asked carefully. Just wrapping up a couple acquisitions. Nothing that can't wait until after dessert. Jennifer stared, stunned. A couple of acquisitions? You make it sound like grocery shopping. I gave her a small smile. Different scale, same concept. Tommy, still scrolling on his tablet, looked amazed. Aunt Sarah, this interview from last year. You said your biggest regret was not spending more time with family. But we never made time for you. You made time for the version of me you could accept, I said softly. My father shot up, pacing the room. Sarah, everything we said tonight, the way we spoke about your future and choices, it was based on what we thought we knew about your life. I don't hold that against you, I answered. But we do, Michael added quietly. We blame ourselves. I looked around the table, really seeing them. My father, who built an empire from nothing yet never once asked about mine. My mother, worried about my security while I quietly built wealth beyond her imagination. My brothers, pitying my modest lifestyle while I reshaped industries. I have a proposal, I said at last. Everyone leaned in. We finished dinner. We have dessert. We open gifts like always. And then we start again. Start again? My mother asked. You get to know the real me. And I'll get to know you, not as caretakers of your struggling daughter, but as yourselves. My father sank back into his chair. Sarah, I don't even know where to begin fixing this. You don't have to fix anything, I told him. You just have to decide if you want a relationship with me, the real me, or with the illusion you were more comfortable with. Silence held the room until Jake spoke. Aunt Sarah. Yes. Can I ask about the AI projects? I'm studying computer science, and your diagnostic systems, they're groundbreaking. For the first time that night, I smiled, truly smiled. I'd love to share that with you. Tommy's voice was shy. And maybe you could tell us about the Cancer Research Center? I'm considering pre-med, and what you're doing sounds incredible. Absolutely, I said warmly. My father looked at me differently now, something close to respect in his eyes. Sarah, would you tell us about your work? Really tell us. Are you sure? It could take a while. 8 years of building a company isn't a short story. We have time, my mother said quickly. All the time in the world. I nodded. Then let's finish this wonderful meal first. And Dad, about the inheritance, I meant it. Michael and David should take over the businesses. They know them best, they've worked in them. That's how it should be. David frowned. But you could buy and sell Dad's companies 100 times over. Exactly. Which is why I don't need them. You do. The legacy should go to the ones who will value it most. My father's eyes filled with tears. Sarah, Dad, you built something remarkable. You gave people jobs. You took care of your family. You created real value. I'm proud to be your daughter. Even after tonight? After the things we said. Especially after tonight. Because now we can finally be honest. I lifted my fork, took another bite of turkey and smiled. Now, Who wants to hear the story of how I accidentally reinvented medical diagnostics while just trying to design a better scheduling app? And for the first time in years, they listened, truly listened. The Forbes list had shifted everything and nothing all at once. I was still Sarah Thompson, the girl who loved her family despite their flaws. But now they finally had the chance to love me back, the real me. The conversation stretched late into the night, overflowing with laughter, tears, and questions. The first fragile steps toward a bond we'd never had. One built on truth. Driving home to my small apartment in my dependable Honda, I smiled to myself. Tomorrow, I'd get back to changing the world. But tonight, I cherished being part of a family who finally saw me for who I was. And that, I thought as I pulled into my parking spot, was worth more than any Forbes ranking could ever measure.